Hello and welcome to the Pet Healer Podcast. This is your host, Dr. Mitzi Vargas, and today we're going to talk about the very big problem in Florida, the invasive species, and usually are pets that have been abandoned by irresponsible owners. And I really got inspired to do this, not only because my recent trip to the Amazon jungle, where I realized the threat of deforestation and invasive species infiltration. They're actually in there too in the Amazon. There's a lot of species that are not native, and they're causing a lot of loss of biodiversity. But I don't have to go that far. The Everglades, our Florida backyard, has a unique ecosystem that is being threatened by the actions of irresponsible pets that just release snakes and release crocodiles have been released. Komodo dragons have been released. A lot of exotic animals have been released in Florida. And unfortunately, this is known as pet dumping. And this is just, should be illegal, there should be a law that punishes people that do this, because this is wreaking havoc in the fauna and flora of Florida. And of course, it can be worldwide. Other countries are suffering the same, but it's very remarkable that in Florida, it is going on. The climate is so beneficial for all these tropical species, and there's abundant food for many of them. So some that have been making the news lately had the giant African snails that were in the pet trade, and they were released and they're toxic. They eat and compete with a lot of local native species. They eat a lot of our species too. They're very big. Devastating for our country, our state. And of course, the Burmese python and ball pythons and all multiple different snakes that are non-native, that are exotic pets that have been dumped illegally, and they have thrived. Not only thrived, they have established themselves in the Everglades and South Florida. And unfortunately, in the news, you hear the contest to catch pythons, and you hear the contest, the longest snake ever found. It was just recent, a couple of weeks ago, 19 feet. And then, of course, last year it was a 215-pound ball python that they found with 122 eggs inside of her. So can you imagine this? Is horrible. It's I don't understand why this is not an emergency situation where we all know, and schools are preparing, how to address this problem, and people should be sharing more in social media how to stop this. And why is it, not good to send them? People think, well, I cannot take care of it, and they will be better off free. Well, what you're not thinking about is that they are outcompeting some native species. They multiply very quickly, and they spread, and they will disrupt the food chains. They will destroy habitats, and that is going to, as a consequence, be a loss of biodiversity. Many of the birds that nest, the snake eat the eggs, and so it's affecting the birds. Many of the big pythons will eat deer, and the small deer in Florida is the preferred food of the Florida panther, which is almost extinct. And if it now faces a giant competitor, it will go extinct. Then the crocodiles that have been found could outcompete the gators, Florida gators. They do predation and competition. So the native ones are ill-equipped. They never face this. Some of them are poisonous to them. They can carry diseases. But it's because they can consume a lot of the vegetation or the smaller prey animals that feed on the chain. So if you have to have the rabbits that might feed, a bigger predator, like the Florida wildcats, and then the chain goes up. And so because you're introducing these new species that can outcompete them, then you're going to cause the population decline of the species that you want to conserve. There's also disease transmission. There was an invasive rat, the Gambian pouch rat, that was in the trade, the pet trade, and it was released, and it just became invasive in South Florida, and it causes a very fatal disease in native birds. And so it carries the diseases, and it just has cascading effects. It's a domino effect. And the economic impact, if they damage, the iguanas were not native from here, and they damage crops. Some of these animals, you don't want to go airboating in the Everglades when there's not crocodiles that usually are very, very aggressive and man eaters, as compared to the Florida gator, which it will eat you, but usually goes out of the way to stay away from people. And so the tourism industry, for example, we have a lot of birding people. Birders are people that are just so obsessed with birds, and they go and follow the migration of birds. And it's a big tourism for Florida, people that come and to just watch a beautiful biodiversity with birds. And there's not going to be that many of them because, they're being depopulated by these, dump pets. And definitely there's a lot of conservation issues that the government even is trying to plant certain areas and try to restore some habitats, especially with the phosphate industry, how they destroyed some of the habitat in the early part of this century. And so these government efforts and private efforts into repopulating this little ecosystem and establishing these little ecosystems are all going to go by the wayside, because these new invasive species that are threatening to just eat everything and kill everything in sight. The lionfish is a especially important one. A lot of people go to the beautiful Florida beaches and reefs to dive, but the lionfish is such an invasive fish, and it's killing a lot of the fishes that are native, and they're colorful fishes. And so it's and they're poisonous, obviously. And so that's impinging in the recreational aspects and tourism aspects of the state of Florida. So Florida has a unique and fragile ecosystem, and we need to preserve it for future generations. And I think the main thing is to promote being a responsible pet owner. And if you can't take care of your exotic pet, then there are places, sanctuaries, where you can donate, or wildlife rehabilitation areas where they can exhibit. There might be some exhibits where you can donate to the exhibits, and they can, give them a good life and still use them for educational purposes. So please do whatever it takes, but to make sure that if you cannot take care of your exotic pet, that somebody else would take care of them. But do not do the irresponsible thing and dump those pets out there on their own. I beg you, for our next generations, I beg you for our beautiful state of Florida, to think twice and be a conscious human being. I hope you liked it. If you did, share it with your friends, and please spread the awareness, raise awareness, and spread the awareness of our emergency state, the Everglades. We all need to put a little bit of effort into conserving that beautiful and unique ecosystem. Until the next episode, stay well.